But my friends, I was just going through Tabletop Role Gaming's forum and ran across a fellow named Leonard Lapka, Lakofka. I don't know if this is his last name or made up last name or whatever. And he was talking about cantrips. Wanted to know where they were. And it got me thinking. I remember a real early edition of Dragon magazine or Dungeon magazine that introduced them. And at the time, they were like, this, oh, it's a great thing. Everybody wanted to tap into them. It opened a range of additional spells for early level casters, and the idea. Of course, there was a bunch of people that didn't like them because they thought they were just cheap tricks, right? And and that's how a lot of times they got used. The players didn't always understand the nuances or the values of a cantrip. Now, they show up in different versions of the player handbook, and I think Unearthed Arcania has them. Although I can't find my copy, I know I got it. But I was looking up my 3.5, which I've seen, heavy use. I don't know how many of y'all got a book that's in this kind of condition, but this is a book that's been heavily played, and this I've loaned it to people and who didn't have like a handbook and so on and so forth. But under every category of caster, bard, cleric, wizard, sorcerer, what have you, they have what they call zero, level zero spells, and those are cantrips. People make an argument that they're not, but I'm sorry if that's a cantrip because that's the concept. This is the initial stuff that a given caster would have learned during his or her early mentoring days, before becoming a wizard of renown or a cleric of substance. And what they did in this particular version was took a number of the early first level spells that really didn't have enough flash and bang or substance to them and lowered them a level. So we don't take into consideration just how valuable a spell like light is until you don't have it. You're in a dungeon someplace or in a cavern or in the middle of the dark woods, and you can't you don't have the means to start a fire. You can't get it going. The ability to do a little cantrip and create a ball of light that's going to basically be a light bulb that follows you around, or in the case of like the Lord of the Rings movies, where Gandalf casts a light spell on the end of his staff so they could see in Moria. So there's a great example of a very low level cantrip put to great use. You know, in the cleric section, there's one where you cure light wound, and basically it just gives one hit point. And I've had a number of people get, why would I want to have that? Because what good does it do? It ain't gonna blah blah blah. Well, if you think about it for a minute, it's it's a damn handy spell to have because while it's not going to put somebody back into the fight per se, it will keep somebody from dying. If your hit points are in the negatives and you're bleeding out, that one spell, that one hit point, bumps you up to survival. It keeps you from the character from croaking. Um, you don't think of things like that. And we go on in stuff that include, in the case of the Orns or whatever, as the clerics call them, cure or uh, cleanse water. That's a nice little trick. Now, okay, now just maybe me. I remember the earliest versions of these things when it were spell. I think it was only for wizards and sorcerers. Although I don't remember sorcerer being a class at the very early beginning, and the cantrips almost seemed like, yeah, parlor trips. You'd have the little trip, tie or untie, uh, tweak. Um, it just seems like mostly things to entertain people. Prestidigitation I can't pronounce that word, but that is also a variant of the cantrip. It allows, it was a catch-all. It's a low-level spell that allows your caster to create or duplicate a number of little minor things, like, untie somebody's shoelaces, or to, move something tiny across the floor, and maybe flip the latch on a lock on a door. See, now there was a creative use of a cantrip right there. I, as a player, used that a number of times to unlock a door, or to open a window, or to distract somebody. You know, kind of like the little gestures that they do in the Force, and so everybody looks in the other direction, right, while they skedaddle. Very valuable use of a very minor tool, and at the same time, the cantrips allowed almost unlimited casting. There was some various variants of that, I believe. In some cases, cantrips took no spell slot per se. You had a slot for them because you limited to how many you could have, and others didn't limit you. You had all of them, and you could use them pretty much at will, without a lot of effort, without a lot of thought, and no cost. Uh, in game systems where the players and the GMs are heavy into the mechanics, and you use lots of spell components and things like this, that's important, because you don't want to waste your expensive materials and your expensive upper level, or your valuable upper level magic slots for minor things. And so being able to use a lot of these tiny, almost insignificant seeming tricks, if you will, gives you a lot of options as a player and as a GM. I don't think we appreciate. I don't know how many people really appreciate the value of these things. I mean, if I look at in the 3.5 version of just the bard spells, and it stipulates, very right there. It says 0 level bard spells, cantrips. So it specifies it. Dancing lights, daze, detect magic, flare, ghost sound, light, no direction, lullaby, mage hand. See, now, right there. Half these spells in the 2.0 version and the earlier versions were not cantrips. These were level 1 spells. And it I don't know why they adapted them the way they did to a level 0. I like it this way because these are, you know, basic stuff. How how often do you use detect magic in your campaign? How many times does your wizard fire off a detect magic spell? Well, if you use too many of them, I mean, you're going to take up how many of your more offensive and defensive slots so you can do this? I mean, I know a lot. I don't say a lot, just quite a few people. Myself guilty of this at one time or another, of cheating by giving somebody a wand or a ring of detection, where that way they just didn't have to use up a slot at all. You know, it always bothers me, and I looked through the book a little bit, but I couldn't find any direct reference to the level 0 spells and their limitations, other than you treat them like, well, a low level spell, because the spells in here start at first level. Uh, sure, if I spend enough time digging through here, there's something, because I seem to think there was something, but it's been a while since I've read through this book entirely, and not everything in my head works the way it used to work. Uh, this Leonard asked about clerical spells, and like I said, create water, cure minor wounds at one point, detect magic as well, detect poison, guidance, inflict minor wounds, light, mending, purify food and drink, read magic, resistance, virtue. So there they go, folks. Get past all the domains. 0 level druid spells, also called orisons, and I may not be pronouncing that right. Great word. Basically, it's the same thing as what the cleric has, with a few minor exceptions. And when when you think about it, when I look at it, I'm kind of reflecting back on this stuff. Paladins don't have them, mind you. Rangers don't have them. Okay, so it's not everybody. Sorcerers do have them. Lord, sorcerers got quite a few, to be honest. Just, I look at it and I think, you know what? It seems to me that when they got the 3.5 version, they pretty much took most of the first level spells and made them cantrips. And I don't know if that was a nod to the versatility of them, because I don't see any of the original cantrips in here. And like I said, I'd have to dig out my 2.0 and check in there. I don't know. I do know it's in Unearthed Arcania, because that was my go-to for quite a long time. Um, there might be one in the spells compendium. Uh, I almost, or Magic Compendium, almost got a copy of that at the local game store that was on sale it was used on sale, and I'm going to get that next because they wanted like 20 something for it. I was going to get that next, and by the time I finally got around to going to get it, somebody got it. And that's the way it usually goes. You know, it's all good. Now, as a GM, I've don't focus on that stuff as much as I focus on trying to counter what the players are going to come up with and what they're going to use. And the clever, creative use of a lot of these level spells has often amazed me and come as a surprise, because every now and then you'll get somebody who really either puts a twist on something or has a really good idea of how cantrips should work. So I don't know, love them, hate them, find them useful, don't. I think they were a great addition, and even if you go back to the very basic original ones, they had lots of potential use. And I hope you guys are using them in your campaigns and allowing the players to dabble in them. I mean, if you're playing this version, you kind of have to, because at first level, a caster needs every angle they can get. And as an older caster, more veteran caster, that's where the creative use of these things come in. Plus, a lot of these are basic stuff. You just, it makes sense that they would use them often. And sometimes I think, and I may have read that someplace, that the cantrips were the foundation for the later spells. So in order to master the later spells, you had to master the basics, and the basics allow you to manipulate small things, cast minor illusions, or conjure this, that, or the other thing. And those later become important because they're the building blocks of the more powerful spells. If you can't uh, lift a 5 pound, you can't lift a 5 pound rock, or move a broom to dust the floor. You most certainly can't, move a boulder later down the road or fly. So it is what it is. Keep in mind, cantrips, good things, bad things, our friends. You let me know.